Representative from Pennsylvania, Mr. Mackenzie, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the topic of this hearing today. A great conversation to be had about how we can improve the lives and education of students all across this country. And what I'd like to talk about, I'd like to give just a little background. My experience in Pennsylvania is that we have a system where charter schools coexist with traditional public schools. And because they are all public schools in Pennsylvania, that's how they are characterized in our state law, and that's how they should be viewed, is all being equal public schools. And so what I see is that all too often in America today, the wealthy have an unlimited set of choices. They can go to private school, they can go to parochial school, they can do whatever they want because they have that access to resources. As you move down that socioeconomic ladder, often the number of choices narrow. And oddly, though, maybe the middle class face the worst or least set of choices because there are scholarships for lower income individuals, and that's wonderful. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but ultimately those middle class families who don't have the wealth and opportunity to go to the school of their choice, and they don't qualify for resources that are and scholarships that are available for low income students, they're left in a situation where they have the least number of choices possibly. And so this is more just a broad conversation that I want to have about how we can expand choice for everybody across the spectrum, but at the same time reduce the hostility that I see for choice. Because we see that in Pennsylvania, these schools coexist. They are both public schools. That's what they are. But for some reason, there are folks that want to demonize the choice of a family that is going outside of the traditional public school system. And so what we see all too often is that it is pitted one against another, which is this really odd thing, I think, to do when you're talking about the education of children. Demonizing the alternative educational system is not helping a child. That is not helping them get a better education. And so, but all too often we see it as a 1-0, you win, we lose scenario. So I would just like to hear from our panelists about what we can do to bring down the negative rhetoric that is demonizing the alternative, the hatred that is out there, that is existing in the hearts of so many people that want to restrain choice and restrain options. How can we have these systems coexist, and what can we do to encourage choice and opportunity for everybody as opposed to demonizing the alternatives?
I'll start, and I've got good news for you. So I run a Facebook group of over 11,000 Arizona ESA families, and they span political spectrums, socioeconomic spectrums. Their life and their lifestyles look very, very different, and there's one thing they all have in common. They're on Arizona's ESA program. And so a lot of the rhetoric that we hear is perpetuated by large special interest groups that are more focused on propping up failing systems than they are focused on students and parents and their rights. So the good news is that at the very ground, most grassroots, most basic level, families love school choice programs, and they are doing everything they can to make sure that their voices are heard and that their voices surpass the special interest rhetoric that we hear from the other side.
And I would jump right behind what Mrs. Clark said. Keeping the conversation student-centric will be far more beneficial, not just from checking the temperature on it, but also actually creating meaningful policy. Because at the end of the day, that's the purpose of education, not just public education. Education as a whole is to ensure that our future is secured through educating our children. And so when that's the focus and those are the conversations, it doesn't really matter if it's a private school or a charter school or homeschooling or whatever the case may be. The end goal is to ensure that children are actually being educated. And similar to what Mrs. Clark said, there are a lot of political interests that have power and are navigating things across the board. But when it comes down to how the children are doing, it's pretty simple. And this conversation is a great example of that. We've heard that vouchers don't work, or that vouchers don't help the lower income minority community. that's me. I am that student that was low income, minority, and didn't have any other options. And so when the conversation is framed that way, it's really hard to jack up the temperature. And some people will try, and I've had a lot of experience in that. But at the end of the day, if we're helping children, that should be our main goal and our main priority.
Well, I want to thank you for that. I think we do need to elevate and raise up these voices of individuals that have succeeded through school choice, because we know all across the country there are good and bad scenarios in both traditional and charter or other alternative school systems. We want to elevate those wonderful outcomes and experiences that are being had across the spectrum, regardless of where they are, and ultimately leave that choice to the families and the parents, because they are the ones that are going to best determine the situation and the setting that is going to benefit their child and their educational outcome. So I just want to thank all of you for being here to raise up these voices, and we want to continue this conversation. Thank you.